The collector of this Tang horse presented me with a damaged antique. The proper right leg was snapped off below the right knee and showed a recent restoration. Otherwise the horse was not damaged at all. No restorations, new or old, were visible anywhere else on the body or the head. The new fracture is clearly a previously restored area. There is an old glue joint below the right front knee. The upper and lower part of the leg show no obvious previous restoration. The surfaces of the fractures are clearly man-made. There are modern tool marks visible, parallel lines probably due to filing the old fracture. This was done to achieve a perfectly flat surface to marry the new lower part of the leg with the knee. The color of the terracotta of the upper leg has a more reddish hue than the replacement lower leg, which is a yellowish ochre color. Again, a good indicator, together with the adjusted fracture, that the lower part of the leg is a modern addition. The adhesive used to join the leg was rather brittle, so not slightly elastic, as most epoxies used in restoration. I therefore assume they used a polyester, since it is inexpensive and easy to use. However, the bonding strength to low fire terracotta is in my opinion inadequate in the long term. To reinforce the modern joint, an iron pin was inserted. Interestingly enough, the restorer chose a rather short length of the pin. This combined with the porous terracotta resulted in a weak bond. Normally I choose half a diameter to a diameter of the thickness of the fracture for the length of the pin on both sides. Iron pins are also not recommended, since in a humid climate they tend to rust and expand and further damage and stain the terracotta. Furthermore, the outside edge of the fractures reveal an about 1 mm coating of what looks like lime plaster. The fracture was cleaned and the iron pin removed. The old pin was replaced by a copper rod. The pin and the fracture were joined with a synthetic resin. The remaining gap was later filled with a calcium filler and retouched with acrylic paint. The restoration is mostly reversible. The new restoration will show up under UV light and will also be visible with a magnifying glass. Coming back to the old restoration and the lime plaster coating. It is probably covering the whole horse and make all previous restoration invisible to the naked eye. Ultraviolet light, frequently used to detect restoration, will also not penetrate this layer that obscures the original surface. To see the extent of the restoration, an X-ray should be taken. This will show previous restorations. It cannot distinguish between original antique material and antique terracotta shaped for restoration purposes. This type of restoration results in what pretends to be a perfectly preserved antique. This will deceive the buyer even by close visual examination with a magnifying glass and ultraviolet light. If the thermoluminescence test is undertaken to date and authenticate such a terracotta, the resulting date of original and newly added antique pieces will be similar. This means all fragments are old, but can come from different sculptures or even architectural pieces from ancient times. Therefore, it is considered a heavily restored antique made to deceive the buyer and increase the value. Since a horse without legs, base or head would be unsellable and worth a fraction. The samples taken from such a horse for TL testing will result in an acceptable date. It is not an issue with the laboratory. However, it is an issue of how science is used to authenticate a composite antique with elements of different origins. Therefore, prior to any TL test, an X-ray or an MRI should establish if there are previous restoration under such a white lime plaster layer, patinated with mineral pigments to simulate an ancient patina.